Modal verbs are an essential part of the English language, as they help us express different degrees of possibility, ability, permission, obligation, and advice. Teaching modal verbs can be challenging, as learners need to understand their meanings, usage, and context. Therefore, it is essential to introduce modal verbs in a structured and comprehensive way, starting with basic concepts and gradually building up to more complex ones. Using a variety of engaging activities can help learners practice and reinforce their understanding of modal verbs, making their language learning experience more enjoyable and effective. In this way, learners can develop their communication skills and become more proficient in expressing themselves in English. Modal verb charades. Write down different modal verbs on small pieces of paper and put them in a hat. Then, have students take turns picking a piece of paper and acting out the meaning of the modal verb without using any words. The other students have to guess which modal verb is being acted out. Modal verb bingo. Create bingo cards with different modal verbs in each box. Call out sentences with modal verbs, and students mark the box containing the corresponding modal verb on their bingo card. Modal verb role play. Have students role play different scenarios where modal verbs are used, such as asking for permission, giving advice, or making suggestions. Encourage them to use different modal verbs and practice proper intonation and stress. Modal verb sentence completion. Provide students with incomplete sentences that require a modal verb to complete them. Have them choose the appropriate modal verb and complete the sentence. Modal verb storytelling. Give students a set of pictures or a storyboard and ask them to create a story using modal verbs. They can also work in pairs to create and act out their stories. Modal verb board game. Create a board game with different squares containing sentences with modal verbs. Have students roll a dice and move their game piece accordingly. When they land on a square, they have to read the sentence aloud and explain the meaning of the modal verb. Modal verb fill in the blanks. Provide students with a paragraph or short passage with missing modal verbs. Have them fill in the blanks with the appropriate modal verbs. Modal verb debate. Divide the class into groups and assign them a topic to debate, such as whether or not students should be required to wear uniforms to school. Encourage them to use modal verbs to express opinions, suggestions, and recommendations. Modal verb matching game. Create cards with different modal verbs on one side and sentences with modal verbs on the other side. Have students match the modal verb with the correct sentence. Modal verb song lyrics. Choose a song with modal verbs in the lyrics, and have students listen to the song and identify the modal verbs. Then, have them discuss the meaning and usage of the modal verbs in the song. They can also create their own song with modal verbs and perform it in front of the class.